Life is often so busy, taking us here, there, seemingly everywhere. When you aren't able to make it to church, we hope you are fed and nourished by listening to the preaching of God's Word wherever you are at the moment. In the meantime, take care and God bless.
Welcome back, everyone, to our sermon series on 7 tiny things. For those of you here in the sanctuary, it is really good to see all of you up close and personal, as we also have our friends gathering from their homes in ways that we are so accustomed to these days as time goes on and on. It has really been nice for me with this booklet that we're reading of tiny things. It's actually 12 tiny things, but we've taken these 7 things because with all the big stuff that's going on, it's nice just to focus on a few of the little things that perhaps I can tweak, find ways to reinvent and reimagine. Welcome to worship as we gather here to talk about, as Pastor Gail said, creativity. I'm here today. And I sure could use a little bit of creativity these days. Last weekend, one of the things that greeted us in the news wire was the death of CNN anchor person Larry King. I'm sure you saw it as well. You, perhaps like me, didn't have a steady diet of Larry King for the 25 years that he anchored that 9 to 10 o'clock in the evening time slot on CNN. He was there. I saw him from time to time. But it wasn't lost on me a few things about the passing of Larry King. The number of anchors that received such great mentoring from him that spoke eloquently in the network. Number 2, that for the 25 years that he was behind the camera was there doing his interviews, were really critical time for CNN to get launched. And so CNN was very grateful to have a figure like him as they were inaugurating this 24-hour news network. We can argue whether or not those are good things or not, but the fact is that tribute was paid to Larry King for doing that to CNN. But I caught note of the press release that was written by Jeffrey Zucker, this CEO of CNN, that was released over the last weekend. And, you know, he's singing the praises of this celebrated journalist in their network. But he closed it in an interesting way. He closed it by saying, "From our CNN family to Larry's, this isn't much of a surprise, we send our thoughts and prayers." So not much of a surprise that he would close it in this way. But then Zucker, the CEO, wrote, "And we promise to carry on your curiosity for the world in our work." We promise to carry on your curiosity for the world in our work. Now, I'm not here, of course, to talk about CNN or Larry King. I am talking to you, faithful people here of St. Andrew and beyond. And I think there is that phrase about carrying on a curiosity about our world that rung true for me last weekend and again here this morning about whether or not these days we're finding that really easy to do during the lengthening pandemic and all of the realities that exist around us, if it's race relations in America or the politics that seems to be going away but not really going away as our lawmakers do their thing in Washington, D.C. And I wonder if all of these things collectively rolled together is leading us to just simply not being curious about the world that is around us. This is, as some people say, it's not necessarily a marathon these days, though it does feel like a marathon. I'd like to think of it perhaps here to give good news too as a part of the rest of my sermon as well, but this is more of like a long relay. I want you to hold on to that thought. That isn't a marathon, but this is a long relay here as people of faith living together in a community. Because I'm feeling a little bit like these days are getting old to me. And I know you're probably feeling the same way. This is getting old. It was old actually 6 months ago. Now we're at the end of January. We're 10 months and counting now, and it feels like it's getting very old at times, to be very real and frank with you. Yesterday afternoon, I was telling Pastor Matthew this a bit ago. We had the opportunity to go down to southern Minnesota to German Lake to go ice fishing. And we busted out of our normal Saturday routine, whatever that is, to go down onto German Lake, 16 inches of ice, to be with Michelle's family. Didn't catch a thing, but I'm amazed by the camera that drops to the bottom and that he can swivel, and we saw lots of fish, but just no fish in the air inside this beautiful ice house. But what a nice break that was, to go down to southern Minnesota to drive a little bit and to do something social distanced like that. As Jamie said, as we were leaving, there'll be a lot of ice houses for sale when the pandemic ends, because people are doing that now in order to keep their time filled with good things. Well, Jesus, in our reading here for today, talks about the old wineskins. And I guess at times I feel like I'm living in an old wineskin and I need to pour new wine into it. You know how a wine works. In the ancients, they would pour the wine into the new wineskins and it would ferment and it would grow and it would bubble and get good over the course of time to be served. But you can't put in new grape juice into those older wineskins that have already expanded, because they'll just burst. Jesus is telling this parable in those days. And I think when he's telling that story here today for us, as we interpret it here in 2021, in all of our circumstances, that I want to creatively pour a little new wine into these doggone old wineskins and bust out a little bit and enjoy, as Pastor Gail said, and as the theme is today, a little bit of creativity, of how we as the people of God are busting out and sharing. Well, Pastor Gail and I, before the service, did not talk about what she was going to say in her children's message, but I had also channeled right into the Genesis reading, too, about how God has it within God's very being to be creative. We know that there was the formless void. We know that God took that chaos and made it into something ordered, something useful, something life-giving, and something that gave energy and propelled creation into all that we know today and to celebrate. It's that wonderful, wonderful thing that anchors us, the story from Genesis 1. But as the story of Genesis 1 goes on, you also are part of that story, because when God created humanity, we were created in the image of God. And when I think of being created in the image of God, it is that same creative ability to make something out of nothing, to be encouraged to build, encouraged to pull together, to see things that maybe aren't in reality now, but they will be as time goes on with a little bit of effort. I remember that old biology documentary show about the monkeys that were using these simple tools. They would take the sticks and they would push the sticks into the anthill and hold it in there. And then as the ants got onto the sticks, they would pull the stick out, and then they would have the ants to eat. Amazing. I mean, the biologists were, wow, look at what these monkeys are capable of doing. Look at what we human beings, with our big brains and our thumbs, are capable of being and doing as well. We are created in that same image of God to do that which God has already done in creation and pulling together. And so I want to invite you and encourage you in these ways to be creative and to use who you are in your life and in your circumstance to create something new. To put some new wine into the old wineskins and bust it out a little bit. To give some energy and to give some hope, and to give yourself a little fuel for that which continues on and on and on. I have a few stories that I thought I'd share with you here this morning of people who I like. Because I think if you are around people that are creative, there's an infectiousness about it. It's like it's contagious. At least it is for me. And when I am running this relay, I need to pass the baton on to someone else here who maybe has a little bit more creativity than maybe I do from time to time. So my first image here with you is of this little puppy. No, it's not my puppy. It's just been a few sermons since I've put a puppy up on the screen. My puppy now is no longer a puppy, 45-pound Cooper. This is Gilly. And this is the new puppy that is owned by Chuck and Renee Noble, one of my colleagues here at St. Andrew. So Chuck and I, we had a couple days in the office I did today, and we got a chance to connect a little bit more. Gilly, they got Gilly last Saturday, and Gilly's 6-7 weeks old. You know, I can think back to Cooper, and I don't know if I want to go back to 7 weeks old with a puppy or not, but Chuck and Renee now have Gilly, and we got Cooper in order for us to enjoy a new family pet. What I love about Chuck and Renee, what I love about Linda Fry, as I shout out to her as well over the camera here, is that Chuck and Renee once again are taking on a dog to train to be a service animal. That's their creative gift. And this is their new addition. So a service dog, you know what a service dog ends up doing. A service dog ends up being in the possession of someone with a disability. This, that, or the other thing. And Chuck and Renee are so good about training and equipping this golden retriever, probably pretty hyper now, but being calm, trained, collected, useful, and loving. Chuck told me that there are two hard things about this process. The first one is the training process, getting the puppy into adulthood. And the second one is saying goodbye. But for creative people who see something at the end of the tunnel, that this dog will end up in the household of a disabled person is infectious to me. It's contagious. There's new wine going into these old wineskins. Another thing that came across my desk here, story number 2. There is a woman here at St. Andrew who loves to quilt. Maybe you saw this article in the Eden Prairie Lifestyle magazine. Here is one of the photographs that is in the Eden Prairie Lifestyle magazine, and this is Mary Alsop, a member here. She, of course, is not just a quilt maker, as you can see from the ribbons behind her from the Minnesota State Fair. She is an award-winning, amazing quilter. And she teaches classes, and she always instructs her students to enter their quilts into competitions, even if they aren't perfect, because it's part of that process of staying sharp. And she is, not slowing down here during the pandemic. But she told me this week when I talked to her about her quilting, is that the main part of her doing quilts, and the most fulfilling part, is giving quilts to people who are survivors of cancer, because she's a cancer survivor. So that's pretty cool. Creative, but also an eye on where that creativity can be passed off and given. It's a little bit, for me, some new wine into that old wineskin that helps me see that something is up. Something is up. I also want to introduce you to, if you haven't already, to an old friend of mine. Obviously, I'm in the blue shirt, and my friend Pat Day there is on the right of the screen behind our face mask there. Pat and I have been teaching bread baking classes over Zoom since the pandemic started, since this fall. We've been inviting people to Zoom in. I've got good microphones and 2 cameras now, and he is planning on coming over on Saturday morning, this coming Saturday, to do these buns here. We're going to make cardamom breakfast buns with kids and families in mind. If you want to register and be a part of that on Saturday morning, you can make buns in your own kitchen over Zoom. A little PSA, it's in the before you go, but I've taken care of it already. But this is what we'll be making on Saturday morning. But this is my friend Pat Day. And again, can I tell you another more meaningful story of someone who's creative, but someone who is constantly pouring new wine into old wineskins? Pat Day has been baking bread for 45 years, taught by his father. Pat Day will tell the story of him having a near-death experience and a vision, a feeling got over him to share. And so for many, many decades now, Pat has been baking bread. Pat has been baking bread for early learning programs like here at St. Andrew. Pat has been baking bread for the churches that he is a member of. At Nokomis Heights Lutheran Church, where I used to be as a senior pastor, he baked bread twice a year for the Bread of Life Sunday. On Saturday, he would bake 150 loaves of bread. 150 loaves of bread, so that the next morning, family who came to worship could come up to give their offerings to God in the life of the church, and then to leave with a fresh baked loaf of bread. He also, though, would not only bake the 150 loaves on Saturday, but he would save one batch to bake on Sunday morning. He'd get up early and come in and bake bread, because there's nothing better than the smell of fresh baked bread in church on the Bread of Life Sunday. So it would just emanate the whole place. Pat's really, really inspiring. He's a Harley rider. He's a joyful, faithful man who sees Jesus in every loaf of bread that he bakes, especially when he gets a chance to give it away and sees someone else smile. Pat, new wine in the old wineskins. And then finally, a little bit of a personal story here as well. This gentleman here with my mom is named Khalid. He is, or was, an employee at the Lutheran World Federation program in Jerusalem, where my family lived for 10 years, throughout the 90s. Now, Khalid died this past week after heart surgery. He is Palestinian. He is a faithful Muslim man. And he was a major, major part of our family life in Jerusalem when we lived there. He started off as a man who watered plants. And every day he would come over to our yard and the house where we lived, which was on the LWF property in Jerusalem, and he would water. And he would smile and say hello. When my mom and dad would come home from the grocery store, Khalid was there to help carry the groceries up into the room. My sister texted this week that, Peter, though you and Eric were a long way away from me, thousands of miles away as my brothers, because she's 6 years younger than us, Khalid was her other brother. And so this picture was taken here 3 years ago when we were with a Holy Land trip from St. Andrew, and we hope to go again here in 2022. We had not connected with Khalid because he doesn't speak a word of English, still doesn't speak a word of English. But we arrived at Lutheran World Federation to see people again, to tour the hospital and so forth, and we bumped into Khalid there, and there was an instant bond again that existed between Mom and Khalid and me. He kissed me twice on both cheeks, that kind of loving embrace, and here we were, brothers, yet again. And this endearing picture of him caressing Mom in this way is very much a Khalid picture. It's creativity. It's how we're created to be, to give, to share. To put that old wineskins, put those aside and put new ones in, where hope can be reborn. Where we can be comforted again and just know that everything is going to be okay. When I think about defining creativity here this morning with you, I think about these words. Creativity is the opportunity to see, like I've been talking with you, to see, to discover about ourselves, and to hone a God-given gift that's tangible or it's intangible. If it's chalad, it's the gift of compassion and friendship. If it's pat, it's the gift of giving away bread so that other people can smile. For personal satisfaction, for the empowerment of others, and for the care and healing of God's world. That's Peter Johnson's definition of creativity, of faithfulness, and a vocation. So I don't know about you, but like I said before, I feel like we're in a marathon, but I'd rather call this a long relay. That when I'm up, I will take the baton and go, and that there are people like these that I've told the story of, and people like you, each of you, in your own special ways, can take that baton and run just a little bit while I watch. That's how God gets this world recreated all over again. So I can't wait to see how it turns out. Thanks be to God. Amen.
We hope you found this week's message helpful as you think about how you will live out your faith each day. If you would like to support the ministries at St. Andrew Lutheran Church, you can do so by having your credit card information available and then texting a gift to 952-260-9007. Thank you, and God bless.